Yo, party people. Okay, July 1st, number 2. All right, so today I've already done one video and I was covering the two witnesses again, how they had been, we're in chapter 11, how they had been murdered and allowed to lay on the street for 3.5 days while the Antichrist team is celebrating. It says all the nations are going to see this. Everybody's going to be celebrating, giving gifts to one another because they're so excited because these two are killed. And then God brings them up. God wakes them up and puts his breath into them, and he brings them up into heaven. So let me share with you what that says, because I want to go into this idea of the clouds. So it says now in verse 11 says, now after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell on all those who saw them. And they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, come up here. And their enemies saw them. In the same hour there was come up here, and they ascended to heaven in a cloud. So that's what I want to focus on. And their enemies saw them. In the same hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. In the earthquake 7,000 people were killed, and the rest were afraid and gave glory to the God of heaven. The second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. Okay, so I covered the idea of the first woe and the second woe, and this was the ending of the second woe. But I want to cover this idea of the cloud, all right? So we clearly see that these two, or Moses and Elijah, at least that's what everybody in the commentaries believe, that's who these two folks are. And I just wanted to give you guys something to think about, something that make you go, Whenever you see some things in the Bible, it's that are you kind of take for granted the idea of the cloud. But I want to go back and show where it's mentioned other times and show you what this, and show you, kind of give you a bigger picture of what it's talking about there. So one of the first places it's mentioned is in Genesis 9:12. And this is where the earth had been completely corrupted. God had to destroy the earth. Noah's bloodline was the only pure bloodline left. And God sent the rainbow as a promise. So it says here, and this is Genesis chapter 9, and God said, and I just want you to hear how many times this is mentioned. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. So this is God speaking to Moses. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth that the rainbow shall be in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The water shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. Okay, so that's the very beginning where you see this. So what is that? So the cloud is absolutely linked to the rainbow, right? And you're going to see as we cover this that the cloud is representation of the presence of God and the glory of God. And so when you see things happening currently in the sky, when there's things that are going on, there's these machines that fly in the sky, and there's things that are coming out behind the machines that are not real clouds. And so when you see that, and then you have a beautiful blue sky and you see all of these streaks, and then it's like for the next 2 days, it's completely dark and cloudy and raining, and God knows what that rain is bringing down onto the earth. I want you to keep that in mind. There's a reason that that is going on. There's another way of disrupting and destroying the glory of God and blocking God, trying to block God, right? Which is ridiculous. Okay, so another place we see this is Exodus, and this is in chapter 13. And so this is when God takes them out of Egypt, right? So, and Moses is leading them. So chapter 13, it says, so they took their journey from Succoth and camped in Etham at the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light. And it says he did not take away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night. So that's another example. The pillar of cloud and fire were actually God himself. Okay, another place we see it is in Exodus 24. And again, who were we seeing this? So now we're going to see a lot of this cloud stuff, and it's in conjunction with the story of Moses, who we also believe is one of the prophets in the end time that's going to be, that we just covered in chapter 11, that gets killed. So here in Exodus chapter 24, it says, So this is when he's going back up to the mountain to get new 10 commandments, right? Because he'd already broken them. And so now he's going back up into the mountain. And it says, so Moses with his assistant Joshua went up to the mountain of God, and he said to the elders, wait here for us until we come back to you. Indeed, Aaron and Hur are with you, and if any man has a difficulty, let him go to them. And Moses went up into the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. And now the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the seventh day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The sight of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. So Moses went into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, so then the next place we see the cloud mentioned is Exodus 33. And it says, Moses took, okay, so this, again, this is awesome because this is the preceding before the temple is created, right? So this is Moses meeting with the Lord in a tent that's like the tabernacle. So Moses took his tent and pitched it outside the camp, far from the camp, and called it the tabernacle of meetings. That's what he called it. And it came to pass that everyone who sought the Lord went out to the tabernacle of meeting, which was outside the camp. So it was, whenever Moses went out to the tabernacle, that all the people rose, and each man stood at his tent door and watched Moses until he had gone into the tabernacle. And it came to pass, when Moses entered the tabernacle, that the pillar of cloud descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Lord talked with Moses. All the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the tabernacle door. Okay, so that's another example that we see it in the Old Testament. Now we also see it in Leviticus chapter 16. It says, and the Lord spoke to Moses, again Moses, after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they offered profane fire before the Lord and died. And the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron your brother not to come in at just any time into the holy place inside the veil before the mercy seat, which is on the ark, lest he die, for I will appear in the cloud above the mercy seat. Okay, now then we also see it in 1 Kings chapter 8, and this is where Solomon is, remember David was preparing everything for the temple, Solomon built the temple. And so we see here, now they're bringing the ark into the temple, and this is during Solomon's reign. And it came to pass, when the priests came out of the holy place, that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not continue ministering because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. All right, so that's another place. 2 Chronicles chapter 5. So this is continuing the idea of the tabernacle, or the temple. And it says, and it came to pass, when the priests came out of the most holy place, for all the priests who were present had sanctified themselves without keeping to their divisions, and the Levites who were the singers, all those of Asaph and Heman and Jeduthun with their sons and their brethren, and at the east end of the altar, clothed in white linen, having cymbals, stringed instruments, and harps, and with them 120 priests, sounding with trumpets. Indeed, it came to pass, when the trumpeters and singers were as one, to make one sound to be heard in praising and thanking the Lord, and when they lifted up their voice with the trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music, and praised the Lord, saying, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever, that the house of the Lord was filled with the clouds, that the priests could not continue ministering because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of God. So that's awesome. All right, so another place we see it is in Ezekiel. Now this is awesome because this is there's a lot of references back to Ezekiel with the book of Revelation. There's a lot of similarities that you see. Remember, the entire first chapter of Ezekiel is Ezekiel seeing God. So what you see here is in verse 25, and it says, and above the firmament, over their heads, he's describing what he's seen in heaven, was the likeness of a throne, in appearance like a sapphire stone. On the likeness of the throne was a likeness with the appearance of a man, high above it. Also from the appearance of his waist and upward I saw as it were the color of amber, with the appearance of fire all around within it. And from the appearance of his waist and downward I saw as it were the appearance of fire, with brightness all around. Like the appearance of a rainbow in a cloud on a rainy day, so was the appearance of the brightness all around it. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of God. Okay, so of course I'm out of time. But again, I'm going to continue on because there's more references in the New Testament. I want to cover that as well. Okay, so read your Bible. Jesus is coming, so pay attention to clouds. And that's why they're doing stuff in the air. All right, love you. Hold tight. Peace.